it's another follower suggested subject. So also trying out my new little setup here that I used when I did my online workshops this week. So I thought that I would see how well it works for live streaming as well. Could be fun. I'm painting some milk duds in case you guys missed that. So I'm using gouache in case people are not familiar. I'm sure most of you know that I've been painting gouache a lot lately. But I could show my setup a little bit better now, which is nice. So I just took my milk duds and kind of, it's funny, I thought, okay, I'll make them look really natural. So I just took my setup and just like kind of spilled the milk duds out onto my little, what do you call it, like platform, whatever this thing is, and they came out like perfectly arranged. It's like, oh, that's the exact opposite of what I wanted them to feel like. So I then just had to kind of mess them up a little bit. So hopefully this will be a little easier than than the good and plenties that I painted, but there'll still be some complicated things in the scene, but it shouldn't be too bad. Was watching some James Gurney demos last night, and it looks like he likes to start with a pretty thinned out layer of gouache or casein when he paints. I like to keep my wells separate, like my darks in one well and my lights in the other. It needs some color or else it'd just be brown on black. So the yellow of the box is a good way to make sure there's some extra color in there. Yeah, a lot of time I work dark to light actually. But it depends on how I feel about the scene and what's going to be the most efficient thing or efficient way to get everything established. This is pure burnt sienna thinned down, and it's actually too red. I've been watching all these videos on YouTube lately about color temperature, and everybody has their own way of explaining things. It's kind of interesting. Been working on my online course and was curious as to how other people explain color temperature, and they tend to do it in most people are explaining it in a kind of an abstract way, or like in a little bit of a kind of like a classroom setting of like it's like showing the color wheel and showing like color mixing on a palette, and it's a good way to kind of start to get the concept. But what I've noticed is that it might not always translate to out in the field like practical use. So thinking about how to show that better. And color temperature is so much about like the relationship between two colors. But one thing I thought was interesting that somebody was saying that if a color is warm, it skews toward orange, and if it's cool, it skews toward blue. So they're saying that in theory, to warm a color, just if a color is too cool, just add some orange to it, and if it's too warm, add blue to it. And that's like a super simplified way of thinking about it. And yeah, for the most part, that tends to work, but all the nuances of that is where it gets a little more interesting. Like, how much orange? Are you using tube orange, or just the color that skews toward orange, like a burnt sienna has a lot of like red in it, or like a lot of warm. It's almost like a really muted orange. But it's like, you know, the difference between, okay, this little thing in the light, it has more of the color of the light in that white square, compared to, it's the same local color, but it's facing away from the light, so it reads a lot more blue. Same exact local color, but the plane is facing away from the light. Sometimes you'll add a very thin gouache with a warm or cool color to adjust it. Yeah, I do that sometimes too. Did you steal it from me? What was that? I never really thought about that before, but it does add up. Yeah, so if you really want to kind of limit your palette and just think of orange and blue as your modifiers, and then the rest of your palette is just for local color, that is a valid way of working. It is a very limited way of working, but you'll definitely learn value in color temperature by limiting the scope of your painting. Like, you won't get really sophisticated color mixing, and it limits you in the amount, in the range of like different color schemes that you can work with. But if you're just painting realistically, or painting your subject as you see it, you totally get away with working that way. It's a very James Gurney method. Like when he paints the piles of snow. Yeah, exactly. That was a very limited palette when he did that. I think that's all he was doing, basically. You know, I don't know if James Gurney has done any free videos specifically breaking down color temperature, but he does seem to talk about it pretty well in that little color and practice video that we saw together. It's interesting, as this burnt sienna, as it dried, it actually sunk in and became a little cooler. All these colors kind of change themselves as they dried. That's one thing about gouache. The more water, any water media, the more water you use, the more the values change as they dry. Just beefing up these darks to give them all my things some really solid, a really solid base for each shape to give it a more solid structure to it. As I keep going, I'll build up the body of the of the paint. Just figuring out these different planes. Yeah, I do wish this paper had a little bit more tooth to it. I feel like it's slightly on the slippery side, even though it's not like a really smooth paper. Oh, by the way, these are Stillman and Byrne Nova sketchbooks. I love the beige tone to the paper. This plane is darker than I had it. It's going away from the light. It's a bit of a gradient. So as it's still wet, I will blend those two. Values together. I started with some tea this time. Making some variation in that box there. As it moves away from the light, it gets a little darker. And the color temperature changes a little bit as well. A little bit more of the influence of the black box that it's in, so it takes on some more of that. And so yellow and black together make a bit of a cold green. I wanted to make those edges blur out. It's hard to do with gouache, but I'll come back in once that dries to reestablish that that edge there. I'm not worried about it spilling around. It's kind of a fun thing about gouache that you can just let stuff like that happen, and once it dries you just come back in with opaque color and just cover up any odd things that are happening. That's too green. Just trying to figure out what color I want this this platform to be. It's like black foam core, so it's got a little bit gray in it, but I don't want to go too cold of a gray. So let's find the value of it first. Actually, let's make life easy on myself here. Put this down, wait till it dries, and then see what color and value we end up with. I was saying on the class that I like flat brushes because they keep my shapes simple. Very slightly reflective, so putting that in there. So using that spill over to my advantage there for the reflection in the platform of the box. Let's find all the different planes in the milk duds themselves. So the planes on the candies facing upwards are going to be a little darker because they're inside of this little box I made. So there's the black foam core reflecting down onto it. Probably too early to get into reflected light, but I really actually just want to get the forms established as individual pieces now at this point. So I'm finding all the things on the edges that help with that. Our shapes are starting to take form, but I feel like I'm losing the amount of contrast because the shadows aren't dark enough. So let me go back in and work on those a little bit better. It'll help me get the form a little bit more accurate. Taking Payne's Gray and adding a little bit of either alizarin or quinacridone rose, just to give a little bit of color in the shadow there. My gouache palette match my oil palette, or are they way different? There's some overlap, yeah. Of course I use... Here, let me see if I can... So let's see, what overlaps? I have titanium white, cadmium yellow, yellow orange, or cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, cadmium orange and red, alizarin crimson, cobalt violet hue is on my oil palette, but it's almost the same as this. I think this is ultramarine violet. It's almost the same thing. Ultramarine blue. I have a green gold. They don't make a green gold gouache, but that's similar in color to that. Viridian, burnt sienna, and burnt umber. And yeah, the rest of it are just other gouache colors that I use. That's I think permanent yellow orange. That's quinacridone violet. And then these are some convenience colors here: brilliant pink, sky blue, leaf green. This is called pure blue, but this is similar to like a phthalo blue. Payne's Gray. Payne's Gray I find pretty useful in gouache because you need like a dark. For some reason in gouache, ultramarine blue and burnt umber mixed together don't make a very, very strong dark as they do in oil paint. And then this is, I think, raw umber, and I don't even remember what this is. This is some sort of magenta. These are just colors that I've had forever. They're probably not colors I would restock. Just don't use them enough. It's starting to look like milk duds. Just going in and getting all the smaller and smaller planes. little bit of reflected cool light in here, so I mixed a little bit of sky blue with some quinacridone violet. A little bit of reflected light is nice, but careful not to overdo it. So I'm gonna work now on rendering out one of the milk duds to just so I know what I want to establish as far as a look for the rest of these. It's easier just to tackle one right now and really make it look how I want it to look, and then use that as kind of a template for the rest of them. I noticed that the further and further I get into my painting here, the more the dark piles of paint, or piles, my dark mixtures of paint and my light mixtures tend to merge with each other. Just working on smoothing down some of these forms and getting some really subtle variation in color there. Using the cat tongue brush to feather out my brush stroke. I really talked a lot about the cat tongue brush while I was doing the gouache demo. I'm wondering if I may trick out some money there.